Well, thank you for joining us for the press conference for House Bill 4113. I'm State Representative LaShawn Ford, joined by advocates for House Bill 4113. And we had a hearing today, and out of all the years that I've been in Springfield, I've never seen a situation like today where we had one side say that everything is perfect and it's okay for us not to be fair in Illinois, that it's okay for certain situations to have an unbalanced act of justice. And to that, we're going to continue to negotiate with all parties for House Bill 4113 and to speak to the nature and to the merits of House Bill 4113 will be Chad Loud.
Thank you. My name is Chad Loudermilk. My name is Chad Loudermilk, ChadLoudermilk, and I'm the president and co-founder of Illinois Fathers for Equality. I just want to thank everyone that came out today to support House Bill 4113. Our hopes today were to talk to the opposition and hear their points and try to work with them on getting a bill passed in Illinois that is in the best interest of our children. And based off of the research that we've had over the past 20 some years, it says that it's in the best interest of children to have equal time with both of their parents. And so that's what we're fighting for. We're trying to introduce a presumption of 50-50, which means that it's presumed that all parents are good and that if you're a good parent, then you deserve equal time with your children. I always say that as a father and as a parent, if I'm good enough to have my children 28% of the time, then why am I not good enough to have my children 50% of the time? And so with that being said, I'm going to open the mic up to some other people here. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys so much for being here today. My name is Grayson Cash Jackson. Everybody calls me Cash. I'm the founder of Restoring Freedom. I'm also a retired Navy veteran after 20 years of military service, and I'm a 2018 gubernatorial candidate for the Libertarian Party. I was here today to speak about HB 4113 and why I'm a proponent of that bill, why it's important for Illinois citizens to recognize this for what it is. We're talking about what's in the best interest of our children, and unequivocally, the statistics indicate that what is best for kids is to maximize the extent of both parents in our children's lives. Now, the judiciary does have the capability to do that, yet they have not and have never been doing that. They've always had that discretion to maximize the extent of both parents, but they have neglected to do that duty. Why that is, I don't exactly know. But I want to take just a quick moment and read some statistics to you guys that shows how detrimental it is to our children to not have the father involved in our child's life, because overwhelmingly it's been fathers that have been adversely affected. But ultimately it's our children and our communities that are adversely affected because of these decisions. The fatherless generation statistics indicate that 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. That's 5 times the national average. That comes from the U.S. Department of Health census. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. That's 32 times the national average. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. 20 times the national average. That comes from the Center for Disease Control. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. 14 times the national average. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes, and that's 9 times the national average. We really have to take a hard look at and see that what we've been doing for decades now, what we have normalized in our society, has really had a tremendous amounts of adverse effects to our kids and our communities. When we look to the areas of the south and west sides of Chicago, and we're talking about crime, and we're talking about why are these issues so bad, and why can't we get to the root cause? because we don't address the root causes of the issues. And they're so basic that nature or God, whatever you believe, instilled that children need both parents involved in their children's lives. And when they have that maximum extent, our children thrive. But children in these communities, they're hurting. And that could be, in some of these areas, it could be attributed to the failed war on drugs and incarcerating parents by the thousands for victimless crimes. It can be attributed to the court system right now that has an extreme bias in its rulings. There's a lot of reasons that this is occurring. But what's best for our kids is to have moms and dads involved to the maximum extent. If we remove the two pieces of conflict that harms our children the most inside a custody dispute, and that is money and time with the children. These are the two things that are fought over the most and litigated the most. I know because I've been to court nearly 100 times in 3 years, just trying to be a dad. Why do you have to fight that hard in a free society and one in which espouses equality, that our Constitution protects these rights that men and women died for? Why do we have to fight so hard? We're not asking for the world here. We're only asking to be viewed the same. That we're fathers, we're parents, we're mothers. Because this bill will protect mothers too, because I've got some really good friends that are moms that are being affected just like I am. And if this bill had been introduced years ago like it should have been, or approved years ago like it should have been, then these mothers who are also being adversely affected, they wouldn't have to fight so hard to be in their children's lives, as they shouldn't be. Thank you guys so much for having me here today.
I'm Mark Ludwig with the Executive Director of Americans for Equal Shared Parenting. And first off, I want to thank Representative Ford for his leadership on this issue and all the people that were involved. You guys in Illinois involved right now. We've got 35 states this year that are addressing the shared parenting issues. Last night, we just had a successful vote in the House Judicial Committee in Missouri, 9-0 unanimous in agreement of our shared parenting bill. And that tidal wave is coming across the country. And as everyone all said, the time has definitely come. The only argument the opponents usually have is that it's going to box everyone into a cookie cutter, one size fits all. And nothing could be further from the truth. The bill basically keeps everything the same. All it does is it moves the starting point to equal footing for the benefit of the child. It's not about father's rights. It's not about mother's rights. It's about a child. And when two parents walk into a courtroom, until any facts are known, that child should have equal access to both their parents. It's a very common sense bill. And just really proud of these guys. Like I said, the time has definitely come to make this go on across the country. Illinois is providing some great leadership, and I was excited to be a part of it today. But thanks again to everybody for your leadership.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jesse West Sr. with Dad's Can 2 here in Springfield, Illinois. I just want to take a moment to thank LaShawn Ford, everybody from the Restorative Justice Committee for taking the time to meet with us today. Mark for making the trip, everybody else for making the trip and supporting us on our House Bill 4113. Another thanks to Chad, Corey, who's not here, and everybody from Illinois Fathers for Equality for everything that you guys have done with this bill and bringing everything together. It's definitely for the best interest of the children. As they've all said, I reiterate that just about starting fair, starting at 50-50 and working from there based on each case. It's not a cookie cutter or a mandate. It's just an equal playing field, play fair, start at the same position, and that's where we're at. We have lots of mothers between our organizations, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, that are all in support of this. So it's not fathers versus mothers, it's parents. This isn't a male or female thing. It's about the children having the equal access and time to their parents, and that's what we're here pushing for. Thank you guys all for your support. Once again, thank you, LaShawn, and everybody for everything you do to make this possible.
So thank you all. And, you know, this is a fight, and I heard Cash say, why do we have to fight so hard? I think it's the worst to fight. I mean, so what? You have to fight, but at least if you fight, you could fight and know that you're going into a fight equally, going into the fight fairly. But the way the law is today, you have some with boxing gloves and some without boxing gloves. I don't think that that's fair. you know, you have to make sure that when you go into a fight, that the fight is equal if you want to have justice prevail. And so the way the law is today, it's not equal. There's one parent that will probably have an advantage over another. And House Bill 4113 is the work of many people, not just men, but women all over the United States. This is not just Illinois doing it, as you heard. This is work and studies that's been done throughout the country. And this group of men and women that's leading the charge for House Bill 4113, they're open for compromise. All they want is what's fair and just for the fight for the one that they love. And with that, we want to thank you all for attending the press conference, and if there are any questions, we will take them.
Sean, is there I presume the courts would have still some kind of an override if evidence was presented that one of the parents was unfit?
That's right. This is not a mandate where it's automatic 50-50. Evidence must be presented to prove that you have a right and that you're most fit for your child. And did you want to, anyone else want to speak to that?
Yeah, kind of to elaborate on that a little bit more is that we're just using 50-50 as a starting point, and since it's a presumption, any presumption is overcome by factors that would be detrimental to the well-being of that child. The current law has 17 factors that are considered in determining the best interest of the children, and we didn't take those out. We believe that it is important to keep children safe, but we also feel that it's important that we start at equal.
Would your argument in general be that this is a throwback to another time that is a gender-based presumption where that women are better caretakers than fathers?
I would say that we're talking about, President Obama asked fathers to step up to the plate and be a parent and be a father. And we're having fathers step up to that plate and doing those duties that maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago weren't normal for the men to do. Now that we've got women in the workplace, we're trying to get equality everywhere. And where it's lacking is in the family courts. And so we've been asked to step up to the plate to be fathers and be a good parent to our kids. And we're a group of fathers and mothers that are trying to do that, and we're not given that opportunity because of the way the current system is.
And to be clear, there's no law that says a judge can't give equal parenting, right? So this is more just kind of putting some of an emphasis on an equal starting point of presumption that both sides are fair unless otherwise evidence shows otherwise?
Right. What it is it's a presumption that both parents come in fair, and it's just clarifying that even though the current law allows judges to rule 50-50, we know that about approximately 82% of the time that's not true. So what we're seeing there is that 82% of the time the father or the other parent is not good enough to be a parent to the children equally, and based off of research, that's really not true. So we're trying to bridge that gap of where judges are able to rule that way, but we need to start that way. If both parents are fit and they presume that already, then it should be assumed that we should have equal time.
And last question, but when kids are involved, is there, I don't know all the law, based upon their age, I presume this is more affecting younger children. At approximately what age would the court be influenced by the testimony of a child as to which parent they would prefer to live with?
I don't think that, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the exact age. I know that there isn't maybe a specific age that they take into account, but I was told kind of a brief reference that it's around 12 to 14 years of age. And so when a child is 12 or 14, a judge can talk to those children. Actually, the law allows the judge to talk to a kid at any age. But and he can take that into consideration. So that's also a part of these 17 factors that are already in the current law, and we're keeping those there because there may be situations where a child wants to spend more time at one house or the other, and the judge can take that into consideration when making that determination.
Actually, a big issue. Would this impact, I mean, there's always the issue of alimony and child care payments. If there is equal parenting, would that eliminate the payment by fathers to mothers or vice versa of child care payments?
As far as, it would not. It would not affect the child care at all. When a divorce now happens or occurs, usually child care is split 50-50, or one parent is required to pay for the whole thing versus the other. That is a different part of the current law that we did not adjust to. We didn't change anything in regards to money or exchanging of money. That's a whole separate part.
Representative, were there any arguments by the other side that you wanted to address that you heard during the hearing today?
Well, I think that the other side believes that the law is perfect and that it's okay not to be fair. They believe that there should be instances, or whenever you go into court, there should be one dominant parent that starts out. And that's their argument. They believe that the way the law is, that it's okay to have one dominant parent lead the discussion, even though we know that the reason why the two parents are in court is because they couldn't get along in the first place. And so why would you put someone in lead of a discussion when there's no agreement from the beginning? The court should start out and say, okay, you two adults that couldn't get along, we're going to start out at ground zero, and both of you are equal. Let me hear what's happening.
Would this affect same-sex marriages with kids?
That's a good question. I think if there's a custody, then it would mean the same thing.
So it requires equal access by both spouses,
That's right.
not just men.
That's right. Anytime there is a custody dispute.
There was also a difference of opinion on the term legal presumptions during the hearing. Can you address that?
Did you want to address that?
Give me the chance since it's your state.
As far as the presumptions, the current presumption, they're concerned about a presumption that we've put into place that it is presumed that if both parents are found fit, then they should be given equal rights to equal time with their children. The current presumption that they already have in place says that it's presumed that both parents are fit, and then if they're found fit, then there should be no restrictions on parenting time. That is what they have in place currently. We're taking that a step further by saying, well, if we're found fit, and we know based off of research that is compiled by 110 researchers support that what is best for children is spending equal time or as close to equal time with both parents, then we can assume that it's best if you're found fit to have equal time with both parents, and that's a presumption. There's always situations where that isn't best, and that's why it's a presumption and not a mandate.
Well, it's just unfortunate that you have to be in a situation where, in most cases, men have to fight to be in their kids' life. It's pretty sad, and I think men like that's here today and that's fighting for this, and women that believe that there should be equality in child custody, they should be commended, especially men that say, I want to be in my child's life. Could you imagine a man running away from being in their child's life, but you have men running to the court saying, I want to be in my child's life, and now the door is being shut on them saying, you know what, we're going to let another party lead this discussion, and we will let you in when we say you can come in. We know that the law isn't fair, we know the law isn't just, and they stated it in committee today, but they're okay with it because they believe that that's in the best interest of the child. And there's a lot of case law, and Chad and all the others could speak about why it's in the best interest of a child to have both parents. But the bill is very simple. Let's be fair from the beginning. And that's the most important thing. Who wants to start out a fight or a discussion on losing end from the beginning? No one. And so our courts should not allow that. And all we're asking for is to make sure that when you go into the courts, that everyone's treated equally and fair and no one has an advantage over another. That's in the best interest of a child. If there are no more questions. Yes.
Kids are seeing you fighting for fair parenting. Do you think that makes them feel more important, like they're of more value to our society?
I think so. I think that if a child has a mother or father or two fighting for them, I think they like it. In fact, you know what? I think when my daughter is, it's nice to have someone fighting for you. I mean, so her mother's always fighting for her on one end, I'm fighting for her on the other end. You can't have that. I say, yes, you can. Kids really do. They do like that. And it's amazing because I don't know how many deadbeat dads are going to run to court and say, I want to be in my child's life and I want to be responsible. I think this bill will help fathers want to be in their children's lives. It will safeguard the children because we will have a order, so to speak, with the courts that can always be revisited. But this bill is fair, and you have two people fighting, and that does do something good for a child's psyche. Anyone else?
I was just going to say that, when we talk about fighting for kids, at least it's a positive fight versus the current system where it's a winner-take-all.
Oh.
And right now, parents know going into that courtroom, they've got to fight. And I mean, it's a nasty fight because they have to get the edge. If parents knew walking into the courtroom they were probably going to get equal, half of that adversarial relationship would go away. Unfortunately, it's the Bar Association, to be upfront, that likes that adversarial relationship because the longer you can keep that adversarial relationship going, it racks up billable hours. But most parents, I think if they know, we've got a high probability we're going to get 50-50 anyway, let's put that money in a college fund.
Right.
Instead of going to the attorneys. So I think it would solve a lot of co-parenting issues. You're never going to solve all of them, but I think it would solve a lot if we move that starting point back to zero. And I love that. I'll just end with this, the analogy that Corey, who couldn't be here today, came up with. I can't get responsibility for this, but we just had the Super Bowl. Imagine if the stands, the stadium was filled and everybody's looked for the game to start, and right before the game starts, they put 82 points on the scoreboard for one team and 18 points for the other. Who would stay watching that game? And unfortunately, that's what goes on right now. And I'll tell you what, kids are a heck of a lot more important than a football game or a Super Bowl. And we just can't have that anymore.
Do we know how the Judges Association, have they taken a position or been contacted on this?
Not officially, but I'll just tell you nationwide, they're usually not in favor of it.
But one thing that the judges, I think that someone to speak to it, that they issued us, have found that they've been biased. And so that's important to know that you can't have a system in place that's not starting out fair and have a system in place where we know judges have issued a statement that the courts and judges have been found to be biased when making rulings.
I'm going to speak back to about the kids, how they feel about us fighting. My son, specifically Jesse West Jr., some of you guys might have seen the post from Sunday night. We're reading his short story, Superheroes book, and I happened to ask him what his favorite superhero was. I expected it to be Batman because he has every Batman toy that there is, and he said, "You, Daddy." Made me tear up and emotional. I definitely thought it was going to be Batman, and I asked him why, and he said, "Well, Daddy, you're fighting with Dads Can Too. You're doing all this for dads and children." He's like, "You're on TV, you're on T-shirts, you're on the news and radios, all that stuff, just like all the superheroes." And anybody that doesn't know our logo, it's made up of mine and my son's hands holding each other. And every once in a while he'll see it and he'll just run up to me and jump in my arms and say, "Daddy, let's do our Dads Can Too hands." So for my son, he sees me on TV, he runs around the living room. If he comes back from, I pick him up from school and he happened to hear us on the radio, Daddy, I heard you on the radio. Dads can too. Dads can too. So it definitely, the kids enjoy it, and that's what we're doing. And I'm not doing this just for my son. We're doing it for kids everywhere. So thank you.
And the last thing, I think there were 2 questions that were asked, and I think Dr. Bedell should come up and speak to it. The way society sees a parent and who should be the dominant one, and whether or not fighting for a child does something for a child's ability to be successful. Would you?
Fighting for a child?
They had 2 questions. What does it do when you have 2 parents fighting for their love?
Oh, well, because of the fact that kids are bonded to both parents. They love both parents. They really, do not like to be put in a position in which there's any kind of division there where they almost feel like they're forced to kind of take sides. It alienates a child emotionally, and because those bonds that are so absolutely important to a child's development, that they can consistently go to the father, consistently go to the mother, those get ruptured and they lose a huge resource as a result of that. So, it's just a very, very divisive thing, and it's, I always look at a lot of these issues, and we're looking at it from a legal standpoint in many ways, or legislative standpoint. The reality is divorce is primarily a mental health issue. It really puts at risk the mental health of everybody, both parents and children. And it's interesting that when legal opinions are oftentimes, they make statements about the best interests of children, but they don't really put any kind of verification to that concept. That's a concept that's so vague and it has such an emotional tone to it that when somebody says, well, we're doing what's in the best interest of the child by going through all this litigation, and you ask them, well, where do you get your evidence for that? I mean, really, what do you establish as the basis for best interest standards? They can't tell you, because it's kind of just opinions, or it's anecdotal experiences from worst case scenarios. And the reality is that all the, as has been said, the empirical evidence indicates that the concept of the best interest, in the sense that what is generally the best for children, has really been established in the literature as kids having equal access to their parents. So they can bond, they can use the resources of both parents. They don't get put in positions where they feel like they have to do what we call triangulate. They have to become an ally of one parent and see the other parent as the enemy. That does horrible things to the emotional well-being of a child, and should not. And I think it's a form of abuse, quite frankly. And so, I think if we're establishing concepts of best interest, they need to be based on some verifiable information, not just the opinions of people that have vested interests in keeping things the way they are. Because, if you reduce litigation, you reduce, as somebody said, the billable hours of attorneys, and it's a turf war in many ways. I think we need to work more on helping parents to learn to be conciliatory, to presume that they're going to have to cooperate together because of the equal parenting thing, and that in some sense an unwillingness to cooperate is going to be looked at as an issue that is detrimental to the best interest of children. So what was the other question?
If the mother is society, and how the mother is perceived to be the caregiver.
Yeah, well, that concept is such an old concept. I mean, it really is a concept that was formulated probably 50 years ago when mothers stayed home with their children and were the primary caretaker, and the tender years doctrine of the necessity of the mother being with the child exclusively almost is something that has been rebutted in the literature, that a man's attachment early on is as important, that kids don't have to form one attachment to one parent and that it messes them up if another parent tries to attach. The reality is that multiple attachments are healthy for kids. They increase the resources that a child has, and in that sense of the word, they really are, it's in their best interest. Again, society has had a gender bias because of the fact that, the old standard of women staying home, it's really not supported in the modern age. Women work as often as men do. When men and women are working, they have to co-parent if they're together in a marriage, they have to distribute time and responsibility. Even though I think there is a sense in which sometimes moms tend to take more of the responsibility, but dads, I think, are really stepping up and becoming more equal with that. And so that old concept is not workable, and it's also the basis for child support, because generally speaking, the parent that makes the most money is the one that pays child support. It's just a formula. We all know that it's kind of driven in some way by the financial needs of entities. I won't say who. But it really is unfair, and I don't know why, since this is more of a mental health issue, the data that comes from mental health sources aren't looked at. Why are attorneys who are basically have opinions, or they opine about something, why are they the ones that we use as resources when they can't give us specific information to back up their statements about best interests of children? So, that's
Doctor,
my-
would you say your name and
Yeah, it's Dr. Jim Bedell. I'm
How's
a
it
clinical
spelled?
psychologist, Bedell.
and you are,
I'm a clinical psychologist up in Cary,
how long have you been
Illinois,
practicing?
40 years.
40?
Yeah, 40 years, and I've done a lot of work with, primarily my interests have been with family systems, understanding the dynamics of families, and I've worked with the court system quite a bit in that area.
Has this been passed in any other state that you're aware of, and have you studied any outcomes?
This is probably something he could tell you more about.
Yeah, as I said, this year we have 35 different states introducing bills. The closest is the neighboring state, Missouri, my home state. Last night we passed the House Judiciary Committee 9-0. That's the hardest part of getting a bill passed in any state is the Judicial Committee. In Missouri, it happens to be on the House side that is the toughest. So not to seem overly confident, but I think we're on the home stretch in Missouri of getting it passed this year. Kentucky did pass HB 496 last year, which is a bill for temporary orders. This year, they're going back for a permanent order of the same thing. But as I said, the tide's going across the country. It's not a matter of if a state's going to pass, it's a matter of when and how many are going to pass it.
Representative, last question. Would you agree with the assessment that that lawyers are interested in, and the lawyer groups are more interested in keeping the law as it is because it racks up more billable hours?
You know, I would have to say, I can't say that they are. I want to be fair, because either way it go, I think that you can have cases where more fathers feel that the law is more just and fair, and they're going to come to court and say, you know what, this is great. I know I have a fighting chance. And we could see lots of fathers stepping up, trying to get be a better co-parent and to have 50-50 shared parenting. So I think that lawyers, they just have a special interest for other reasons. I'll just say it that way without any negative opinions. But they could still make a lot of money, and they should do what's in the best interest of children. Thanks.